Hello YouTube, this is Rosen, your local realtor in Northern California. I have been so busy with work that I literally have not had time to do YouTube, but I have completed a lot of deals this year and I got all new equipment, which is great. So I just wanted to talk about a few things that were going on in the markets today. It's a really interesting time. Basically, there's a ton of houses that are on the market and sellers are getting desperate. So I just wanted to go over a few factors that kind of define that scenario. So first and foremost, it's the federal funds rate. It has been high. As you can see here on this chart, that we actually have not come down very much. We peaked out at 5.33%, and they've lowered it down 1 point to 4.33%. Now, there's some debate on whether or not the Fed is actually neutral or whether they act politically. So Jerome Powell has been receiving some pressure from Trump to lower the rates, but they have their own mandates. One of the ones is inflation, but actually inflation really isn't that high right now. So Trump is kind of dancing around what he's going to do with Jerome Powell, and it seems like, well, at least it says so here, but we never know with Trump. He could change on a dime tomorrow. But President Trump indicates he'll let Fed Chair Jerome Powell serve out his term, which is really interesting, and I actually think that's okay. I don't really like the idea of the president coming in and just installing somebody that's going to do his bidding, because the federal funds rate, it basically dictates how hot or cold the economy is going to be going. And the president, while he does influence this, I don't think that it's actually his major responsibility to determine the Fed fund rate. Now, there's a larger discussion here about the free market. And the free market will always be the most efficient determiner of interest rates. But that's a whole nother discussion. What is interesting and what is happening now is basically there is a huge glut in the market because of the funds rate here. And this is just an article that I found. Nearly half of Sacramento home listings have price reductions. What does this mean? I'm not going to go through the article. We can all figure out what it means. House prices are too high or people can't afford it. It's pretty simple. So what I did is I came into my software here, and I just did a quick check. Now, over here, you can see that this is for the last 5 days. And what this does is just show me kind of where the market is. So there's been 2,067 new listings. There's been 1,741 price reductions. That's a lot. There is 1,500 houses pending and 1,500 houses closed, which does show that there is actually still movement in the market. Now, I read another article that I don't have pulled up here, but it said almost half of California homes in some cities are owned by investors. There is, in my experience, I've learned this, there's a lot of cash waiting on the sidelines for deals. You know, the average investor, they can buy, one house and they have their conditions at which makes it a good idea or not. But investors, they have lines of credit, they have millions of dollars, they have portfolios. And so a lot of these houses are being bought up by investors. It's not BlackRock like you would think. There's been some changes as to what they can do. But this is just local, small-time mom and pop investors who have, let's say, under 50 units. I know that's a lot, but that's considered a small-time operation. So I just wanted to come and confirm this theory here. So what I did is I clicked on the price reductions and then I sorted them by amount. And I found some pretty interesting stuff in here. So just look at this. This is $925 to $870. This is $925 to $850. Okay, $75,000 off. Not bad. This is, I found some more in here. $912 to $730. That's almost $200,000 off. And they've been on the market here for 111 days. So just over 3 months, 3.5 months, coming up on 4 months. Now, this is where you can take advantage of this. And I actually just had a couple of clients and we were discussing bidding strategy. There was a house listed for over 500,000. I believe it was 518,000, and we wrote an offer at, get ready, 400,000. That's over 20% lower than what they were asking. To me, that's amazing. They didn't even counter. They didn't even bother to argue. Hey, we want 425. Hey, we want 450. Hey, we want you to pay for X, Y, and Z. Nothing. We literally closed on that house for 400,000 when they wanted over 518,000 for it. So this is the bidding strategy. Offer less. What I can do, and this is just something that I've learned, is we'll come to the top here. We're going to go sort this by days on market. So let's do it the other way. So it's at the top. Look at this. You see these houses? This has been on for 1 year. They have not done a big price reduction. But some of these people, let's just kind of browse through this. $549 to $459, $100,000 price reduction. And mind you, this is without anyone asking, right? So they would probably be willing to take even less than that. So what I've advised a number of my buyers is go ahead and find 10 houses that you would consider to be interesting, and I'll write up 10 offers for you. And we'll just do it at 20, 30, even 40% below asking. Because here's the secret. Somebody will have some reason to sell for 20, 30, even 40% under asking. They have a job that they changed or some life event, they got divorced, whatever it is. Somebody will want to sell for way less than listing. Well, they don't want to, but they will. Now, it's my job to figure out who that is and to help my customers get those prices for way, way less. So that's just kind of where we are in the bidding strategy. It is an absolute buyer's market. And there's some other indications of this. Oh, it's interesting because during the 2008 financial crash, there was a 30% drop in housing prices. Well, guess what? Some of these people are already dropping by 20, 30%. And you can offer them a drop at 20, 30%. It's very hard to know we're at the bottom. Is a housing prices going to come down farther? I don't know. There's conditions in which they may, and there's conditions in which they won't. But you can take control of your own housing destiny and simply offer less. It's like buying a house at the bottom of the 2008 financial crisis. There are signs. Usually what happens is there's legislation that comes into being or some type of rule change that expresses and manifests the showing that houses are too expensive. The first one being nearly half of the houses have had price reductions. Bingo, that's a giant sign that you may get a house for much cheaper than you initially thought. Beyond that, there's a change in how the loans are determined to be eligible. So before, it was really just your income and your credit score. But there's this company, Vantage Score, and they're out of San Francisco, I believe, or at least they operate in San Francisco. But what is interesting is that they will now take into accommodation your rent history payments. I can't express how big of a deal this is. I've heard so many people, especially where I'm at where rent is really high, say, I could pay, I'm just making it up, around here you could pay $3,000, $4,000, even $5,000 in rent. But then the loan originators, they will say, oh, I'm sorry, you don't qualify. But in a lot of circumstances, if I did the math, and if I bought the house that I'm living in, it would actually be cheaper in the total monthly mortgage payments. So the theory is, Why can't I afford a mortgage when I can afford rent? And what Vantage Score here is doing is really interesting. They're actually changing the way that that works to incorporate rent into your calculations of whether or not you can buy a house. A little linchpin of this is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. There's something that's called the secondary mortgage sausage market. And basically what that means is when a company who does loans, or a bank, depending on the bank, when they issue a loan, they have to do that on reserve requirements. And so they can only issue so many loans. So if you hold that loan and you bring in that monthly income, that's great. But they figured out that you can actually make more money if you sell that loan onto the secondary mortgage sausage market. The people who are in control of what loans can be bundled and packaged and sold is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So this is what's called a conforming or a non-conforming loan. And that's the standards at which the loan is originated. Now, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are going to be accepting Vantage scores, or Vantage derived loans, which is actually a huge deal. That means that more people can get into houses. This isn't exactly the same as the subprime crisis, although it's similar, and it's a sign that houses may be overvalued. What happened in the subprime is that they were issuing loans that are subprime, less than ideal. They have since tightened those rules, but when they do this other valuation method of how much you can earn, that's another determination that can be used there. And that kind of loosens the requirements. So we're in a very interesting place. I think that next year, when Jerome Powell's term is up, they're going to lower these fund rates. We all know what happens when they lower the rates. That means you can afford more house. So what is a strategy that I'm personally recommending to my clients? Offer 20, 30% less on 10 or 20 houses. When those houses basically get the benefit of the lower interest, they're going to shoot up. And that's what happened during COVID. The interest rates were smashed down to zero, right? And then all the housing prices shot up. So now is presenting a grand opportunity. Right now, in certain circumstances, it is just like buying a house in the 2008 financial crash at the bottom of the crash. I did some math on some houses there. There was one house, it was a $1.34 million house sold in 2007, okay? It then crashed down and was sold for just under $1 million. Over the next 10 years, that house then became worth $2 million, and it gained $100,000 a year in equity over the next 10 years, which is amazing. That's like having a second job. Now, it's not for free, you gotta put work in, but imagine having a part-time job that pays $100,000 a year in equity. These are the type of circumstances that are available in the market right now. So obviously, you should be very careful, and there's tons of caveats to all this, and yes, house prices could continue to fall under certain circumstances. However, excuse me, because of the glut in the home supply, I don't actually think that they're going to be a huge drop continuation. So, if you find this interesting, of course, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think is going to be happening, and let's continue to watch. If you ever need some real estate advice, remember, everything's free till you get a house, and all my information is below. Thank you much.